Roughly 15 years ago, Acura introduced a new controversial nameplate to the States called the ZDX. Now, the ZDX was intended to be a coupe-ified version of the very popular MDX, and because the vehicle was kind of ahead of its time, sales were tepid at best, with Acura selling just over 7,000 units in the 3 years that it was on sale. Now, for 2024, the ZDX is back, and it follows in the footsteps of its predecessor because this is once again an experimental vehicle, being the brand's first ever fully electric SUV offering rear-wheel drive, and it's also the first ZDX to offer a Type S variant with up to 500 horsepower under the hood, making this the most powerful production SUV that Acura has ever built. Now today, we're actually back out here just north of Portland, Oregon, with the rest of the members of the Automotive Video Association for our annual fall event. And the big question I went answered, has Acura truly developed a ZDX that can wear the coveted Type S badge? Stay tuned to find out. So I feel like the industry as a whole has been waiting a long time for Acura and Honda to finally introduce a fully electric vehicle. So now that we finally have the new ZDX in person, let's go ahead and talk about the powertrain specs. Now, lifting up the hood, you can see there is no frunk underneath this vehicle. Now, I also want to briefly mention, I'm going to try to do this as little as possible. This vehicle shares an architecture with the Cadillac Lyriq and the Chevrolet Blazer. Remember, this is part of a partnership that Honda has with GM to essentially build their first EV, while the company works on their dedicated EV, which we should be seeing come to market by 2026, so sometime late next year. But until then, you're going to be saddled with this. Now, this powertrain is essentially the same powertrain you find in a Lyriq. It's the dual motor setup that comes standard with the Type S variant. So what that means is you have an electric motor in the front and an electric motor at the rear. It draws its power from a 102 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery pack. All ZDXs come with that size battery capacity. And in the ZDX Type S, you get the most power, 499 horsepower. So yes, I said 500, but we'll go ahead and give Acura that extra horsepower and round it up to 500 horsepower and 544 pound-feet of torque. That has the most torque that you're gonna find in basically this platform architecture's like trios. For example, like the Lyriq with all-wheel drive only offers 450 pound-feet of torque. So this has roughly 100 more pound-feet of torque than a lot of the other vehicles that are based on this. If you guys are looking at the A-Spec model, that basically gives you a single motor at the rear, giving this vehicle rear-wheel drive, 338 horsepower, 490 if you guys go for an all-wheel drive A-Spec. So that's kind of an interesting twist here, because the Type S variant only has 9 more horsepower than the regular A-Spec all-wheel drive, but it has a little over 100 foot-pounds of torque. It all goes out through a 1-speed reduction gear transmission. Acura doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time, but we got 4.5 seconds when we first tested this vehicle. The range of this model is going to be around 278 miles. You can get up to 313 if you guys go for a rear-wheel drive A-Spec variant. Now, top speed is around 131 miles an hour, and this vehicle is able to tow a maximum of 3,500 pounds. As this sits, this is definitely a heavy vehicle because of the big battery pack. The ZDX comes in at weighing at just over 6,000 pounds, roughly 1,300 pounds heavier than an MDX Type S. So let's go ahead and close up the hood here and talk about the exterior styling, because as you can see, this is painted in double apex blue pearl, which is technically an Acura exclusive color. I actually really love this exterior color. It's one of the few Acura exclusive colors because they also offer it in tiger eye pearl. And I think the Acura design team nailed the styling of the ZDX. This is definitely an attractive looking vehicle. It's got the signature Acura design cues here with their Jewel Eye full LED headlights, which also offers that chicane style LED daytime running light, LED turn signals. You have the diamond pentagon grille, which is technically closed off because you don't necessarily need the cooling for this electric vehicle. I also like the LED light border that kind of surrounds the grille with the big Acura logo. Down here you can see you have gloss black along with some functional and non-functional vents with active grille shutters. There's also this kind of silver accent here that kind of carries over through the side of the vehicle. I wish this vehicle also had LED fog lights, but you do have a full 360 camera, well-integrated parking sensors, and overall, it really does look like it belongs in the Acura family, especially if you have it parked next to the MDX Type S. This very much looks kind of like a sleeker version of the MDX Type S, which I think Acura did a great job with the styling direction of this vehicle. Now, moving around the side profile, this is where the proportions of the ZDX may confuse you, because this has the longest wheelbase that you're going to find on any Acura SUV at just under 122 inches long. This is a solid like 8 inches longer versus the wheelbase on the MDX. This car is also around 197.7 inches long, about a half an inch shorter than the MDX. So even though this is supposed to be like a 2-row midsize SUV, It has the proportions of a large 3-row, more mid-size style SUV. So I think that's where the proportions look a little bit strange, especially if you have it parked next to an MDX. You can see the wheels. These are the biggest wheels that you're gonna find ever on an Acura product. The regular base A-Spec will, I believe, have a 20-inch wheel. This goes up to a 22-inch wheel. You can see you can also get this in a black finish if you guys want with the Performance Summer tires. This has the standard all-season tires wrapped in a 275/40 R22. The Type S also upgrades the brakes by about 3 inches compared to the standard A-Spec. These are 15.3-inch rotors clamped down by a 4-piston yellow painted Brembo caliper. And then the Type S model also comes with an adaptive air suspension, which is unique to this model. You can't even get the air suspension on the GM triplets. You also have these kind of gloss black painted side wheel arch moldings, and then you can see the silver carries over along the side of the vehicle. I actually kind of wish that Acura offered it with a full paint finish. I think it would make the vehicle look a lot better, but that's just a personal preference. Again, some of you have compared this vehicle's styling to like a hearse. I kind of see it more like as a long roof wagon because, again, it definitely looks a lot lower in proportions versus an MDX. Now, this is the charge port door, which to me kind of looks like an afterthought. I don't love the Type S badge here, and I think this door is also too big. It's a little clunky in terms of the design on the fender. You can see if I push that, it's a little finicky. Open that up, you can see it uses the older J1772 plug with the CCS combo. Eventually, Acura and GM will adopt the NAC Tesla plug, but this vehicle can accept up to 190 kilowatts, but it basically allows you to go from 20 to 80% in about 38-ish minutes. So not the fastest charging vehicle. Remember, it has a pretty big battery pack. It'll take about 11 hours to charge on a level 2 because it has that 11.5 kilowatt onboard charger. Keep in mind, the GM-based Cadillac Lyriq offers a 19.2 kilowatt charger, which allows it to charge faster. Acura doesn't offer that. I also appreciate how this is not a power opening and closing door, but at the same time, I think this door also looks kind of cheap and it looks like an afterthought, but that's kind of a personal preference of mine. You can see the mirrors, black painted, power folding, integrated turn signals and cameras. The roof has that two-tone look where it's gloss black. There's a panoramic style sunroof as well that opens up to vent air. Acura says it's the only vehicle in the segment that has that, although technically the Lyriq, I think, has it as well, so they're excluding the GM twins. You can see there's some chrome over here. It has that floating roof design back here to kind of break up, I guess, the long lengthiness of this vehicle. And then at the rear, I really love the design as well. It really fits the Acura design mold here with these kind of really interesting shape for the full LED taillights, the Type S badge, the ZDX badge here, along with that new E badge that shows off that this is Acura's first electric vehicle. You can see down here, the rear bumper area is black. Again, I would love to see it with a full paint finish. I would have also liked to see a more pronounced rear spoiler back here. The rear wiper isn't hidden underneath the spoiler. And then, of course, this is all electric. There's no visible exhaust system. Now, the other downside with this, being built off of the Ultium architecture is the fact that the cargo area, while it is usable, isn't the biggest. Now, Acura says you get around 28 cubic feet of space with the seats up, the second row seats up. There's no third row in this vehicle. Now, that sounds reasonable until you start thinking of the fact that how long this car is. Now, underneath this floor here, you can see there is a little bit of underfloor storage, a little bit more there if you look underneath there. So that's good that you can kind of hide your mobile charger there. If you fold down the second row seat, that expands the cargo to around 62 cubic feet of space. Again, 62 is fine, but that's also like less cargo capacity than you're gonna find from like a compact SUV. So considering the size of this vehicle, I think that Acura and GM perhaps could have done a little bit better with the overall packaging. So while Acura did such a fantastic job with the exterior design of the new ZDX, the interior, I have to say, could have done more with some Acura parts back here, because as you can see, when I first open the door, it reminds you of a GM, right down to that infuriating bong that keeps going off if you leave the headlights on or if the vehicle is on. I just absolutely despise the sound of that. So let's go ahead and close the door. Thankfully, the door at least has a pretty solid sounding thunk, but again, I really wanted Acura to do more of their actual parts, which again, some of you may view the interior part sharing with GM to be a good or a bad thing. Now, before we start the vehicle up, you can see here's the key fob. If this key fob looks familiar to you, it's because it's essentially the same key that GM uses in all their cars with push button start. The one caveat is it has an Acura logo here. I will say the key fob itself is a nice size. It has your usual buttons here for unlock, lock, power liftgate, remote start, and panic function. Again, it would have been a good idea, I think, for Acura to just use their own key fob system to kind of make this feel more like an Acura vehicle. Now, starting the vehicle up, start-stop button is right here. Put your foot on the brake, and again, this is an electric vehicle, so obviously there's no start-stop noise available. Instead, you just hear a variation of the GM bong, and it just says kind of ready in the instrument panel. And then in terms of the technology department, all ZDXs come with twin 11-inch displays. So you have an 11-inch display for the instrument panel, and you have an 11.3-inch display for the center stack here in the infotainment system. Now, this is also the first Acura vehicle to get Google built in. And this is, again, a reskinned version of the software that you find in a lot of GM vehicles. The one big difference, however, is this car does have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So I'm glad to see that Acura kind of made that right decision there to not put in the CarPlay like you would find in the Chevrolet Blazer. The Lyriq also still has CarPlay, but this system, it's perfectly fine to use, although I guess I have to say, if you guys are used to an Acura system with Acura Connect, this is going to feel a little bit different. But at the same time, I also find the system to be relatively quick and snappy and responsive, although right now, when you first turn the system on, it is lagging infuriatingly, which is kind of funny because earlier when I was using this, I actually thought it was working pretty nicely. Now, I said earlier it has Google built in, so you can download other apps if you want, except for Apple Music. You can't actually download Apple Music, but thankfully you can just use the CarPlay there to access that. Now, in terms of the materials, this is supposed to be one of their more flagship style SUVs. Now, first of all, I want to talk about these seats. These are the seats that are exclusive to the Type S. You can get it with either a black or a light orchid or a red interior. The light orchid would be a good color combo with the double apex blue. These seats adjust in 16 different ways. They offer heat and ventilation. That's standard equipment on every version of the ZDX. The Type S basically just gives you the Alcantara and the Type S badge and the head restraints. I do think the seats are comfortable and supportive, but again, they don't remind me of any seat in an Acura product. They look like they've been pulled out of a GM vehicle right down to the headrest, but I like the red contrast stitching. The door panel here has some soft touch injection molded plastic. There's some aluminum trim here, some silver painted plastic trim. You have a nice padded armrest area over here. Then the window controls, they're one touch for all four. And again, all the switchgear comes from a General Motors vehicle. You have two-person memory seats. The steering wheel is also lifted from a GM vehicle, but I like the perforated leather with the contrast stitching, the Type S badge here with a flat bottom design. You can see this Type S model also comes with their variation of Super Cruise. Acura calls it 360 or Acura Watch 360 Plus with hands-free cruise, which I've had a chance to test it out. It also works pretty much as well as any GM vehicle. It'll execute lane changes for you. It'll keep you centered in the lane, and it just works extremely well. The steering wheel also has a power tilt and telescoping function, which offers a good amount of adjustability and range. There's a paddle here to initiate maximum regen braking, which is nice. The switchgear, again, comes from General Motors. You have a stalk here to control your gear selector for the one-speed reduction gear transmission. You have to pull it toward you first to go to neutral, push it up to go into reverse. There's your full or your backup camera with your 360 camera if you'd like. You can see the graphic and the resolution is fine. It's not, you know, what I would say class leading. I actually think the Acura system looks a little bit better in my eyes, especially when you look at how so much smaller the screen kind of looks. But overall, you can see there's a pretty good amount of tech, including a heads-up display. Material quality on the dash, you can see there's actual stitching here, covering in leather over the instrument panel hood. There's real leather over here where it's nice and padded. This upper portion here is just a soft touch injection molded plastic. This silver, or this kind of gray flat painted plastic here would have looked better if it was more of an aluminum look trim. There's some kind of chrome look trim over here. Traditional dash vents. And you can see here you have big knobs for the dual zone climate, which you basically can, you know, access via these actual hard buttons, which I appreciate. But I have to say the interior also looks a little boring. For a car that looks quite as aggressive and sporty on the outside, it's a very plain Jane interior, and I think Acura could have done more here with colors, with the style of the dash vents. But thankfully, you can see functionality is great. You have a big center console area here with two USB-C charging ports, although I think the wireless charging pad should have been here. There's a nice non-slip surface here with some cup holders. I like how there's no piano black plastic here, but the wireless charger is right here. And I have to say, it just basically lets your phone kind of slide around in there. So I wanted this to be a little bit more fitted to actually fit your phone, but the wireless charger at least works well. There's nice leather over here, padded center console here. If I open this up, you can see actually a very deep storage area where you can easily hide a few items there from praying eyes if you guys have it parked on the street, for example. You can see, open up the glove box. It's a bin style. It's damped but not lined with felt. So at least there's some good storage over there. And then this model also comes with an 18-speaker Bang & Olufsen stereo. I also forgot to mention there's a nice storage area here. The Bang & Olufsen sound is the first Acura to use the Bang & Olufsen sound system, so it's replacing their ELS audio system. It sounds really good. Acura's ELS was also really good, so I'll have to wait until I get one for a full week to actually try out the sound system and see how it compares. But I mean, overall, this interior certainly, you know, looks nice, but if you guys are used to Acura products, you're gonna be very confused with some of the switchgear and the infotainment system. The big panoramic sunroof, as you can see, lets in a ton of light. It also, again, opens up to vent air, and it also tilts. This is a great feature to find. Most of the EVs in the segment don't allow you to actually open up the sunroof, so I appreciate that Acura actually lets you open it up even larger if you'd like. The seats are also comfortable, but overall, this is where I really wanted Acura to use their infotainment system, their switchgear design, a little bit more of a stylish interior, but I think you could also fix that if you guys go for the light orchid interior as opposed to this very drab black interior with the red contrast. But let's go ahead and hop into the backseat area, because this is where the long wheelbase of the ZDX gives it a nice advantage because the backseat room is plentiful. In fact, Acura says you get around 39.5 inches of legroom. That's actually an inch more legroom versus the second row of the MDX, which is technically, you know, their 3-row family SUV. You can see the seats back here. They give you the ability to kind of fold them down, which creates an almost flat floor. There's a little bit of like a slope here, but the seats also, they also have the ability to slightly recline if you guys would prefer. So that's definitely a nice touch. You can't slide these seats forward and back, but once you get back here, you can see this is where I'd have the seat to drive. When I shut the door, you can see there's plenty of space. The floor is completely flat, so the middle passenger here will have plenty of legroom. Good foot space underneath here. I can easily cross my legs and get super comfortable. There's also rear seat air vents back here. Tri-zone climate. You have 3-level heated seats, 2 USB charging ports, and an actual power outlet here. So good features, but cooled seats would have been nice, especially at this price point. You can see the Type S also includes these manual retractable sunshades. You have the same soft touch injection molded plastic here, aluminum trim. There is some interchangeable ambient lighting, which also looks pretty good. And then down here you can see padded, although down here at this area it's all hard touch plastic, but that's kind of to be expected in the backseat area. You have 2 storage cubbies as well. And then you can see the armrest has, folds down, gives you 2 cup holders. I don't love this right here. I don't know if this is a really early pre-production model. You can see I've never seen where the leather here is kind of a little bit warped, so I'll have to chalk it down to this being an early pre-production model. Headroom space, you can see the sunroof does take up some headroom space. At 5'7", my hair actually comes pretty close to the ceiling, but overall, again, if you're looking for one of the bigger back seats in the class, the ZDX is certainly going to deliver that. So here we are back behind the wheel of the 2024 ZDX Type S. I mean, the Type S name means a lot, especially for an enthusiast, because typically Acura puts the Type S badge on their most performance-oriented vehicles, and the specs for this car are certainly very impressive. Now, the first thing I forgot to mention when I was doing the interior is the fact that the drive mode selector for this vehicle is buried all the way over here on the left side of the dash. Acura typically does a big knob, rotary knob, right here in the center console, so I think that's, again, a design element that they should have carried over to kind of I guess, bring the lineage in of this interior into the Acura family, because without it, it feels very, very different under other models. So I have the drive mode already in its sport setting that essentially unlocks all of the 500 horsepower. It also gives the steering a heavier feel. The brakes and the throttle calibration is going to be heightened a little bit. But what you first notice with this car is just the weight. There's a lot of weight that you're pushing around, nearly or just over 6,000 pounds. But thankfully, when you put your foot down, at least from a rolling stop, this thing feels appropriately fast. I mean, 544 pound-feet of torque is a lot of power. And this thing has that all-wheel drive grip, so it just basically puts the power down. It has a single-speed reduction gear transmission, so you don't essentially have to wait for any shifting to happen. At the same time, though, I also noticed that this car doesn't give you the full power, at least from an initial starting point, and that's kind of where I think Acura should have given you that, especially from a full stop, because this is a Type S. So basically, you just want to floor it here. Again, it's fast, but it's not like blow the doors off and like literally make your stomach feel like it's in the back seat fast, but that's where we got 4.5 seconds when we first tested this vehicle. I'll wait until I get one back home to do a proper updated 0 to 60 test, because I do think that this car could be slightly faster than the 4.5 seconds, but I think if I have one back home to test for a full week, that'll give me the proper numbers that I'm really looking for. The way this thing goes down the road is really nice. It's got that adaptive air suspension. Even though we're on these massive 22-inch wheels, the ZDX rides incredibly well. It's very smooth, it's very isolated, it soaks up the bumps and the imperfections nicely. The seats are also comfortable and supportive, but they also don't have much in terms of bolstering to hug you. You can adjust this little bolster here to squeeze you a little bit more, although it's not the tightest squeeze that I'm feeling. So I kind of wanted to be a little bit more aggressively bolstered. Again, it all goes with the Type S, badge for this vehicle. Visibility is also pretty decent out of the front. The side, this pillar is a little bit large, but I love the digital camera rearview mirror. So that all again makes this thing feel a little bit smaller than its size would suggest when you're driving this vehicle, along with the low dash design. The heads-up display is also a nice touch. The steering wheel also feels good in your hands. I had a chance to drive the Super Cruise on the first drive, but I'll wait until I get one back home to do another updated test. It's pretty much what you would expect it to be. If you guys have tested the newer GM products with the Super Cruise, it's certainly nice. What I just noticed about this vehicle is whenever you're making turns, the steering, for example, doesn't really transmit much in terms of feedback, and you just constantly are reminded about the weight of this car. There's a lot of, pounds that it's pushing around, but I also appreciate the sound it makes. It creates like a fake sound, so it kind of adds to the visceral experience. This thing is fast. I will say that it's going to surprise you. If you guys have never driven an electric vehicle and you must have an Acura or a Honda product, this is going to surprise you with just how quick it is. What I don't like, however, is the regen brake, the one-pedal driving. So this is its normal setting now. It's actually pretty strong. There's actually another higher setting above this, but I found is it actually does bring you to looks like almost a full stop, and then it does actually hold you. So it's true one-pedal drive. Put your foot down again here. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty good. I mean, I like this. This is faster than an MDX Type S, which I appreciate, but at the same time, there's so much more opportunity here for Acura to do an even faster version, like 3.5 seconds to 60, because that's kind of the thing with these EVs, is they're all quick. They all pretty much drive and feel the same. Now car companies, I feel like, are struggling to kind of create that more visceral, engaging experience, and this is where I think Acura hopefully is working on that for their dedicated full EV. In terms of charging speeds, this is also slightly average to below average in terms of that. But at least in terms of comfort and everyday livability, the ZDX certainly lives up to the Acura nameplate, because it's an easy vehicle to drive. I just don't think it quite lives up to the Type S nameplate, at least until Acura gives us a more harder edge version, at least a quicker version, because something like this, I expected it to have like well over 600 horsepower and just kind of be a little bit crazier, especially to match the exterior design, because there are certain elements of this car where the exterior looks great, but the interior doesn't really match it, and then the drive doesn't really match the actual Type S badge. So there's kind of like a weird hodgepodge of things, but overall, I think the vehicle is still a really comfortable car to drive, and most of you who are looking for your first EV and you must drive an Acura will probably be pretty happy with the package of the ZDX. So it's been about 12 years since Acura first discontinued the ZDX nameplate in the States, so I was pretty happy to see the company bring the ZDX back. And I have to say, it was kind of a smart move to bring the ZDX nameplate back as an electric SUV. It's also the first Type S model. It has the most powerful production powertrain for an Acura SUV. So there's a ton of firsts here. So there's plenty of options to make this vehicle seem like a big success for Acura. So after spending the day driving the ZDX, again, I have to say, this car surprised me because it is a very comfortable SUV. It has just enough power. 0 to 60 happens in the mid 4-second range. The downside for me, I think, is the fact that I don't know if this car is quite worthy of the Type S badge, because as you guys know, Type S has a different meaning depending on the model. I think that while this is a very powerful SUV, I actually expected it to be a little bit faster. The other downside I want to talk about is the constant reminder, especially when you open up the door, you're going to hear this little bong. And also, I also found this. There's a little plaque there that says GM built with pride in Spring Hill, Tennessee, which is fine to see in a Cadillac and a Chevy and a GMC, but on an Acura, it's a little bit disappointing to see that and to hear that annoying bong. But if you can get past that, I have to say Acura did a fantastic job with the styling. Obviously, there's a reason why they decided to go to GM, because they wanted to get this vehicle to market much faster while they work on their full electric model, which should be coming by the end of next year. We don't know quite yet what it's going to be called or the specs of the vehicle, but I expect that powertrain and that platform to be a game changer, at least in the EV space. The ZDX as it is now is certainly a solid option to look at, especially if you guys don't mind the Ultium platform. And this is where the ZDX pricing could play a pretty important factor, because if you guys want to get your hands on the A-Spec rear-wheel drive, that starts at $64,500. So yes, that's about $13,000 more expensive than a base MDX with, of course, front-wheel drive. The ZDX comes with rear-wheel drive, which is also an interesting proposition. If you guys want all-wheel drive on the A-Spec, it'll cost you $4 grand more, so just under $69,000, $68,500. The Type S is $5,000 more on top of the all-wheel drive A spec. So this car starts at $73,500. Add in, of course, the double Apex Blue Pearl paint job and the destination charge, and you're looking at just over $75,000. Again, 75 grand puts it basically within spitting distance of an MDX Type S, which MDX Type S has a lot less power, about 145 less horsepower, but it's also more practical. It's actually an Acura vehicle, but it is also slower. 0 to 60 happens around a second slower, mid 5-second range versus 4.5 for this vehicle. Now, 4.5 seconds is fine, but I also think for what the ZDX Type S competes in, it should be doing 0 to 60 in around 3.5 seconds. Because if you guys are looking at something like the BMW iX with the M60 powertrain, that can do it in 3.5 seconds. There's also the Mercedes-AMG EQE, the Audi SQ8 e-tron. So there's a ton of competitors out there, although the ZDX is a little bit more affordable versus some rivals, and Acura also has a pretty strong lease deal. You can essentially lease one of these right now as of this filming for under $500 a month for 36 months with $6 grand down. That's for a base A-spec with rear-wheel drive. Acura also offers incentives up to 15 grand in incentives if you guys want to buy the vehicle, depending, of course, on your tax situation. So there is a lot of offers to entice you into a ZDX, but I just kind of wish that Acura would have, been quicker to offer their dedicated EV architecture. But as this ZDX Type S sits, I don't know if it's worthy of the ZDX or the Type S badge, because I don't think it's quite fast or sporty enough. And I also think that the interior is kind of a letdown. Acura should have done more to give us more of that Acura feel, which again, it's going to be coming in the next year or so. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2024 Acura ZDX Type S. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.